Say hello.
Hello. Cheers. What, a coffee today?
Coffee today, not wine. That's all right.
Black coffee. Look at those two. Fit. What are we making?
So we're going to make a simple sponge recipe today.
Yes.
So we're going to make a 3-egg cake. This is how my grandmother taught me to bake a cake. So I'm now going to teach all of you. We've preheated the oven to 160 C. So to make the sponge itself, we've got the 3 eggs, got some caster sugar.
Yeah.
For your sponge, it's always better to use margarine, self-raising flour,
Yeah.
and a bit of baking powder.
Why is it self-raising? Is it because it's really good at getting itself out of a rut?
So apparatus for the actual sponge, we need scales, we need a mixing bowl, a tin, and it's got a springform bottom, and then an electric hand whisk and blades. You can do this by hand, it will just take a little longer. So, to start with, we're going to start with prepping our tin. So
Yeah.
we've preheated the oven to 160. We're then going to get our tin. We pop the bottom out. That's there. I've cut a square of greaseproof, which is about the same size, with the excess around the edge. Then we pop the tin on top, make sure that it's in.
And you don't have anything
We
attached.
don't have anything else attached.
There we go.
There we go. Lovely.
Okay.
So then, using our marge, kept a little bit of greaseproof just from the square. Get quite a lot, and we just work it in. The bottom is very important, as in the join between the greaseproof and the tin itself. So I always start down the bottom, down there, in that crease, work the butter, and then come up the top. So that's all nicely greased. So now we move on to the actual cake itself. So every time you make a cake, get your eggs. So if you're doing 3 eggs, 4 eggs, whatever you want, everything, basically all the ingredients need to match. If you've got 3 eggs, it will usually be 6 ounces of sugar, 6 ounces of marge, 6 ounces of self-raising flour. So if you have a 4 egg, that will then be 8, 5, 10, etc. Best thing to do though is just so 0 your scales, pop your eggs in whole. So that has come out bang on 6 ounces.
So it's basically about 2 ounces an egg.
Exactly. That's 6 ounces of marge. Now the caster sugar. So that's 6 ounces in there. Get your 6 ounces weighed out of self-raising.
Oh, just.
Nearly finished that. Top tip from Gran. Just add a little, like a level teaspoon of baking powder just for a little extra lift. All the first ingredients are the butter and the sugar. So this will make a bit of a mess, but on the lowest one first. So we've now beat it for probably about 3 minutes. I'm just going to give it a little scrape down the sides. You'll feel that the texture is quite light and nice and fluffy. I'm just going to give it a tiny bit longer. Okay. So now we're ready to add our eggs. So one at a time. This is the stage when everyone gets a bit spooked because it can split. I'm going to teach you how to let that not happen.
And again, if someone doesn't have whisk.
Oh, then you're just beating by hand.
Yes.
So beat your butter and sugar together as much as you can, get it as light and fluffy as you possibly can. So we're going to go for egg number 2, and then I'm going to show you. So you can see that it is starting to do the curdling thing. You can see that it's starting to split slightly on the side. Really, can you see that graininess?
Yeah.
Really don't worry about that. That is basically just because the protein in the egg, the fat and the protein is basically too much for the butter and sugar. So to stabilise, just add a couple of tablespoons of your self-raising flour. So we're now going to add our last egg, and with it, just because we know that it is slightly having a funny moment, I'm just going to put another couple of tablespoons in and beat. So this is now there. Now we add all of our flour and our baking powder together. And then this stage, this is when you don't want to knock too much of the air out of the cake, because at the moment it is quite light. It feels like you'll be able to feel it. So we're going to just go for a... And that's then done. Lift to clean.
And that's it.
And that is your basic cake recipe. So at this point you can add cocoa powder if you want to make it chocolate. You can add some vanilla, which I would have if we had any. So give it another scrape. Just make sure all the flour's incorporated. That looks good. Bring over your cake tin.
And that simple.
That simple.
I'm gonna make more cakes.
Basically smooth it all out. Get it to the edges. A good tip at this point is also to, so you know when if you have a cake and it rises up like that, like balloons.
Yeah.
So if you make a little divot, so it'll look weird, you'll be worried, but don't be worried. Just really move it up to the edges and leave a little hole in the middle. By the time that has started baking, it should turn out flat. Flicky?
Can I lick that?
Yeah.
Can I lick that? It's raw egg though.
That's all right. This is now going to go into the oven. Oven, middle shelf, center of the oven. Don't worry about putting it on a tray, it'll be fine. 160, and I'm going to check that one for a 3-egg cake probably in half an hour. It will probably need up to an hour, but check it at half an hour. And then, yeah, we'll come back to you for butter icing. Welcome back. Here's our cake, nicely cooled. Good colour, good even colour the whole way around. We're going to try and cut it in half. My tip is always just wait for it to cool completely. So we'll go round it like this. And then you can keep a more even situation. In, out, in, out, in, out. Till it joins. Quite a sturdy sponge. So you'll see that it's looks delicious. So buttercream. Buttercream is effectively what it says on the tin. It's butter and icing sugar. And then you can add cocoa powder or lemon zest, orange zest. You can add vanilla.
Anything you want.
Anything you want. So the basic recipe for buttercream is double the amount of icing sugar to butter. So we had 6 ounces of butter. I left it out to soften, and then 12 ounces of icing sugar. All of that goes into the bowl. So I'm gonna add a little cup of water. Well, not a whole cup, obviously. I'm gonna add a tiny little bit just to help the icing sugar basically to get in with the butter. And with our electric hand whisk or by hand, break it up a bit first. And it will make a mess, and I'm sorry to everyone for their kitchens, but it's what you gotta do.
It's fun.
And we go. When it starts to come together like that, don't panic. That's good, because now your mess will stop making. Turn it up. So what we did there was turn it up. When it started to stick, we turned it up to the higher setting. And as you can see, still nice and stiff, so it'll be able to ice, but it's nice and soft, workable. As long as you have nice soft butter, it should all be quite easy. So we're gonna get back our bottom, our base here. You can if you want to, but ours is pretty stable as you can see. Put a little tiny blob of icing underneath just to keep it there. And then this I think is gonna be enough icing just to do the top and the bottom. So, sorry, the middle and the top. but you can do obviously around the edges if you want to. So if you don't have a palette knife like that, just use a knife or a spatula, and you basically want to push down and ease to the edge, but without lifting, because that's how you get all the crumb. So just sort of moving it around to the edges like that. Doesn't have to be super tidy. I mean, depending on how much of a perfectionist you are, obviously. But this is inside, so just remember this is not your... People ain't gonna see this. It's good to get an even layer though, so that the top of the cake sits well, and when you obviously cut your slices, it's nice to see the that it's an even ice in the middle. There we go.
Okay.
You can put a layer of jam if you want to. You could also do cream. You can also, we didn't because we're running a little bit out of ingredients, but make a syrup. So if you squeeze oranges, lemons, or booze, you could put some rum in there. Oof. You could put some, what else could you put? Madeira would be yummy. Coffee liqueur, delicious in a coffee cake. But then you can basically, if you've made it, you can just brush it on to both the bottom and the top before you get to the icing stage. And that would make it really yummy and moist.
Oh, moist.
So just give that a little push down. Doesn't need to be, you know, can be not too hard. And we get this next blob. So I was going to make this chocolate, but I actually decided this is going to be nicer. And then we're going to decorate it with some sprinkles and also potentially some fresh fruit as well, which again you can also do inside. Raspberries would be really yummy in here, or a raspberry jam. Obviously, when I said, you know, you can make the flavour of the cake anything you want, I didn't state what, but you can make it, you know, coffee, you can make it citrus, chocolate, whatever you want. I think that's looking pretty cute for a homemade cake. Got a little bit of freeze-dried raspberry for sprinkling.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty in pink. This is for a boy, but I'm going quite heavy on. Some love hearts, because we need those at a time like this. And then pièce de résistance. If we cut these in half, that would be nicer. And again, you can do whatever you want in this instant, but that's what we've decided on. Nice little rasbug, and then obviously candles, etc., and you're away. That is our simple sponge with buttercream. Love you, Bubble.
Bye.